Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone watching at home to the second Nick Machin Prize Awards event. I have to say, when I stood on stage at Cardiff University's Journalism School back in January last year for our first event, I can't say I expected to be presenting the next event from my bedroom, but I have ironed a shirt for the first time since lockdown started, so we're doing okay. That's the world, of course, we're living in at the moment. And I'm proud to be able to find a way to stage this event once again, to bring everyone together for this, albeit in a virtual format, and hopefully build on the momentum we started to create last year. Thanks to all those of you who got in touch with feedback and opinions about what form this event should take this year. As many of you noted, one of the very best things about last year's event was the opportunity to catch up with old friends and colleagues. And I know it was the City Arms afterwards that was the highlight for many of you. While we've had no choice but to hold the event on a virtual basis this year, we're definitely aiming to be back with a bang in person next year. But whether it's to do with this year's event or next, please do keep your thoughts, feedback and support coming. It's no exaggeration to say that it couldn't happen without the goodwill and publicity that you all provide by talking about it, sharing details on social media, and encouraging talented young journalists to enter so that it can become bigger and better each year. Of course, there's another set of people that this couldn't happen without, and that's our incredible sponsors, Effective Communication, Cardiff Council, and Western Power Distribution. They're all organisations that Nick himself had a close relationship with, and I'm so grateful for the support they've given us to help this event find its feet. Which brings us to tonight's proceedings, which will focus on the two things at the heart of these awards: celebrating outstanding achievements by young journalists and remembering a wonderful man and journalist who went out of his way almost every day of his career to help and mentor those just starting out. The last year has been challenging for everyone, but in the context of the news industry, working from home and everything it involves has proved particularly challenging for those at the beginning of their careers, stripped of the supporting environment and company that newsrooms provide, and often without the space at home to work comfortably. The context of those difficulties makes the work we'll see on the shortlist tonight even more impressive. A massive congratulations to all of our nominees for delivering such an outstanding quality of work in such extreme circumstances. Over the course of the evening, we'll be remembering Nick with the help of some of the many who knew and loved him, including his wonderful wife, Sophia, and also hearing from our special guest, Emma Barnett, host of the BBC's Newsnight and Radio 4's Women's Hour, about the value of mentoring and giving opportunities to young journalists. And of course, there's a small matter of our two awards for Outstanding Story or Feature by a Young Journalist and for Young Journalist of the Year. But first, let's start by reminding ourselves of last year's event and catching up with the winners of those two awards, Marcus Hughes and Anna Lewis.
Hi, my name's Marcus Hughes and I'm a reporter for Wales Online, and last year I won the Outstanding Story Prize at the Nick Machin Awards. It was a really, really lovely event to be a part of, and to even be sort of nominated alongside all of that work was really fantastic. It was also so great to see such a lot of vibrancy around sort of people remembering Nick and what he kind of stood for around the newsrooms and kind of mentoring and progressing people and sort of celebrating a lot of that. It really was a privilege to be a part of.
So my name's Anna Lewis and I'm a senior reporter at Wales Online. It was a huge honour to win last year actually. It was amazing to be shortlisted with so many other great journalists, and to win on the first time we've done that, I think that was really special, and it was a really great night just to see so many other journalists and celebrate the work that we've all done and just put some faces to names really.
Like many industries, I think the pandemic has really sort of changed the way that we work, but I think it's also kind of led to a lot of innovation in the ways that we work and things that we can kind of bring forward into the future. I think the remote working system has proved to be really, really beneficial in some ways, having more people sort of bedded in close to the communities where they're reporting from. In the last year, we've launched a new news brand, Newport Online, in my home community in Newport in South Wales. We've hired two really great trainee reporters who are doing fantastic work in the patch, and I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made in the last year.
So I think, like everybody else over the last year, I've just been trying to make sense of everything that's happened and kind of report on it along the way as well. For 6 months I went over the border and I helped to start some new websites in England, in Northamptonshire and Hampshire and Sussex. So that was a good experience. It was kind of jumping into a new area head first and just finding out what the news was really, what to report on.
I've been really, really fortunate to benefit from the support and guidance of so many really great teachers through my kind of short career. From my time at Cardiff University School of Journalism and through to my first traineeship at Wales Online. There's so many people who really did a lot for me in my career. But if there's someone who exemplifies that, I think it would be Alison Perlman for me. She was very patient, kind and supportive through my early stages of my career, but really pushed me and challenged me to grow and become a much better journalist.
So I think it's a difficult one, but looking back at my time at Wales Online over the last couple of years, I think my biggest influence has been my head of news, Dave James, and that's just because it's great whenever you have a story or you think you have a story or you're not even sure if it is a story. He's just a great person to go to and just to talk about your ideas and just to figure out what to do with that and where to go and how to make it better really. So I think I'd say him.
I think if I was going to go back to give myself one piece of advice, I think I'd say to always take a deep breath and kind of step back when things that seem to be going wrong. At the end of the day, newspapers get filled and the job gets done, and it's not worth stressing out too much about. And I think that's something that is really hard to get through to a trainee early on in their career.
I think the biggest advice I'd give myself was just to be more confident really. I think it can be quite daunting as a trainee journalist coming to this whole new industry, so I think I'd just say go for it, and then if you think you've got an idea, just voice it or talk about your ideas and just really go for it, I think.
Well done to Marcus and Anna for their success last year, and it's great to see how they've been doing over the past 12 months. Before we move on, I just want to take a moment to ask for your support for a charity that's been really close to the hearts of both Nick and Sophia, and that's City Hospice. It's a charity that does incredible work providing medical, nursing and end-of-life care to patients and families in the Cardiff area. They were an enormous support for Nick and Sophia during Nick's illness, and we're extremely proud to support them once again this year. Charities, large and small, have suffered hugely from fundraising activities and events being put on hold by the pandemic. So if you can possibly spare anything at all to help City Hospice's recovery fund, we'd be enormously grateful. We'll share the link in the comments of this stream and on our social media. If you can give anything at all, it would be go to a fantastic place. Thank you. Before we get into our first award of the evening, I just want to take one more moment to thank all the judges who gave up their time to help sort through all the entries and take on the unenviable task of picking our winners. Enormous gratitude to Aled Blake, Gavin Allen, Gavin O'Connor, Jerry Holt, Nadine Ling, Sarah Robinson, Simon Caney, Lewis Vaughan-Jones, Talia Loderick, Eleanor Cressy, and the chair of our panel, Ian McGregor. Thanks to you all. Now it's time for our first award of the evening, Outstanding Story or Feature by a Young Journalist. Let's have a look at the shortlists in this category.
Outstanding Story or Feature by a Young Journalist. Theon Lewis. Nominated twice in the category, Theon's first shortlisted piece is a harrowing interview with Jessica Williams, who narrowly escaped with the children when their family home was reduced to rubble in a devastating gas explosion. Theon's second nominated entry is a heartwarming feature centering on 14-year-old Ayman Faki, who escaped the war in Damascus and became a star player for Astra Gunlight's under-15s. Gareth Evans. Gareth's shortlisted entry, The Mother and the Murderer, has more in common with a Netflix documentary than a typical news story. It centres on mother Angie Dodge and her remarkable campaign to free the man convicted of her daughter's murder. Lydia Stevens. Lydia made the shortlist thanks to a forensic but compassionate investigation into how the tight-knit family networks that the Valleys are known for helped drive the spread of COVID-19 in some of Wales's worst-hit areas. Ryan O'Neill. Ryan's raw and uncompromising interview with former heroin user Tony Davis about the agony of kicking a 20-year addiction earned him the final spot on our shortlist for Outstanding Story or Feature by a Young Journalist.
some incredible work there. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by most of our shortlisted journalists for the announcement of the highly commended and winner in this category. So first, highly commended, and speaking about highly commended entry, our judges said this journalist followed the story through so well and did brilliantly to get such a powerful interview. There was so much detail that the reader actually feels that they are there on the scene. Highly commended in the category of outstanding story or feature is Fionn Lewis. Well done, Fionn.
Thank you.
Lovely round of applause there. I'm sure they're clapping at home as well. And praising our winner's work, the judges said this was the standout piece. It was absolutely gripping. There was a U-turn every few paragraphs, and we kept wanting to read more. Our winner has clearly done some painstaking work, an incredible story, really well told. The winner of the Nick Machin Prize for Outstanding Story or Feature is Gareth Evans. Now, I'm sorry to say Gareth can't be with us tonight. He's working a late shift on the foreign desk at the BBC in London. I caught up with him a little bit earlier and started by asking him how it felt to win this award.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute honour, really. It's a real privilege, and I'm really grateful to the panel and the judges for really recognising my story and the kind of work that went into it. I think the calibre of entries was really high. So that just makes it, even more of a kind of real stamp of approval, I suppose, to get this award. But as I say, the standard of entries was really high, and it just means a lot to be recognised, I suppose, in this way. So yeah, I'd just like to kind of extend my thanks to the panel and everyone kind of associated with the award, because it really means a lot.
And it's an extraordinary story, the mother and the murderer, that you told. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, the work that it took to put together, and how you went about telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly strange one, really. It came about because, my kind of day job, I suppose, I work on the foreign desk of the BBC News website, and I was looking into a completely unrelated story about the death penalty in the US. And I just came across this short write-up of this guy, Christopher Tapp, who is the kind of main protagonist, I suppose, in the story. He was released from jail. And the thing that really struck me was there was just a kind of offhand mention to Carol Dodge, who's this extraordinary woman who campaigned for his release. And Carol Dodge is, if you haven't read the story, is the mother of the victim who Christopher was accused of actually killing. So it's a story of a mum who essentially campaigned for the man who was in jail for murdering her daughter to be released. And I think just that relationship, I suppose, really struck me. So I kind of did some digging, had a little look around into the various kind of legal processes around it, the characters, and it just really struck me that it was a real fascinating story that kind of, I think as the panel said, it kind of felt like a Netflix show almost, just the amount of layers to it. So I did some digging and I kind of presented it to one of the senior editors at the BBC. I just said, look, I've found this kind of crazy story in Idaho. And that editor was Roland Hughes, who is also a fellow Welsh journalist. And he was just hugely supportive of the idea. He thought it was a great story. It was really intriguing. And I'm very lucky that the BBC kind of backed it from the off in terms of resources and time. So yeah, I mean, it took about 6 months to do the research and to kind of really get a strong kind of sense of what the story was. I wrote to all the kind of people involved, Carol, Chris, Christopher, and they were just really keen to be on board and kind of tell their story. And then in December time, 2019, I think I went out to Idaho and I met them all, spoke to the police department, the kind of local officials, Chris, Carol, and spent about a week out there kind of putting the story together. And that was just, a really great experience. And I suppose that the main people I need to thank are Christopher and Carol, because they, it's their story, and without their help, I wouldn't have been able to tell it. And they were really open and really candid. And I think as the story kind of shows, they're pretty incredible people who've been through a lot. And I'd just like to thank them as well for letting me tell their story, I suppose.
Great. And this awards event recognises young journalists and looks at the value of mentoring young journalists, giving the opportunity to young journalists. Tell us a bit about your path into the industry and into the role that you do now.
Yeah, so I got into journalism via a bursary scheme that's actually run by The Guardian for young journalists. And that bursary scheme is actually open for applications right now. So I would, any young journalists or aspiring journalists who are watching this, I would really recommend that they apply. It's the Scott Trust bursary scheme. And the idea of that is to get kind of working class or unrepresented groups into journalism by funding a master's degree in journalism. So I got that bursary, which was great. It gave you kind of work experience at The Guardian, a master's degree in journalism. And that was really my kind of platform for getting in, I suppose, was getting that bursary that's run by The Guardian. And then after I finished that master's, I joined BBC Wales as a trainee. So I got into the BBC Journalism Trainee Scheme, and I was in Cardiff. I worked for Radio Wales, Wales Online, the section of the website, not Wales Online, slightly confusing. But I kind of spent a year at BBC Wales working with all different teams and being mentored by great journalists there. Another great scheme, which I'm kind of really thankful for. And then in 2017, I moved to London to work for the BBC website Foreign Desk. So my kind of path into journalism, I suppose, was really, I really relied on these kind of schemes, existing schemes that are set up for young journalists. The Scott Trust scheme, the BBC Journalism Trainee Scheme. I wouldn't be here without those. So I would really recommend, young journalists look into those schemes because they offer a really good mix of kind of mentoring, financial support, and also just work experience. So yeah, I got in through those schemes and then moved to London, which is where I am now, working for the Foreign Desk of the BBC website. So that's kind of my route, and I owe a lot to BBC Wales as well. That's kind of where I spent a year as a trainee, learned a lot while there, and worked with some great journalists. So yeah, I would say those two schemes are kind of my main route, and I would encourage all journalists to kind of look into them.
Congratulations to Gareth, who I know is watching tonight secretly on a screen away from the prying eyes of his news editors on his shift, and to Fionn for two superb pieces of work that would have undoubtedly earned Nick's hard-earned seal of approval. It's now time to take a few minutes to remember exactly what type of journalist and person Nick was, and the impact he left behind on those who knew, loved, and worked with him.
I'm Sophia Shabani Machin, and I'm the wife of Nick Machin. Everyone who knew Nick knew he was a dedicated husband and a dedicated friend, and that he would do anything for anyone. But not only was he a dedicated husband and friend, he was an amazingly dedicated journalist. He was dedicated to the facts, to the process, to his company, and to the people. And journalism just seemed to be sewn into his soul. Based on many, many colleague accounts, he always had the time for mentoring, for helping, and, just explaining, and for telling, lots of time for telling subpar jokes. Obviously, once I came into his life, he stopped eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the office. But the dedication remained. Sometimes at the price of a date night or two, but it was something that I always admired in Nick, was just that drive and that dedication and the loyalty he showed and the love that he showed for his chosen career. And it's really so lovely to see the same sort of dedication in the work of this year's nominees. Nick would be so proud of just the passion and the drive that they've all shown. And I know that he would, and I do, know that you'll have all the success in the future. And I'm definitely wishing you all the best of luck.
Hi, my name is Laura Kemp. I'm an author and I'm formerly an editor of the Western Mail, head of content at Wales on Sunday, and I was deputy news editor at the Echo, which is where I met Nick. It's where I worked alongside him for years, and it was an absolute pleasure and a privilege to get to know him and his ways, his constant cups of tea, and his vernacular about dippy eggs, and the way he'd drum the desk all the time. He'd always call May the 4th Star Wars Day in the diary. We'd always have lots of cups of tea. He was always full of laughter and swearing, and it was a great time. He was a great journalist, but his skill as a journalist was more than being the backbone of the newsroom. He was the heart of the newsroom, and his skill was that he was able to manage all the different characters that you find, the experienced people, the trainees, people like me who are a bit shouty, but he was more than a boss. He was a friend.
Well, I worked with Nick Machin for the best part of 10 years, possibly longer. And we literally sat shoulder to shoulder on those golden days on the Echo news desk. And I think it's impossible to spend that much time with somebody and not start to speak like them, take on their mannerisms, and you get to know them inside out. And I think to this day, I quote Nick Machin in my head every single day, and I call them Machinisms. And that could be nipping to the kitchen for a cup o' char, or twanging the comedy ruler. And if you know, you know. And I think having those memories in this year, more than any other year, has just brought it home to me how much we rely on brilliant workmates and how we miss brilliant workmates and having those people beside you. And thinking back about Nick Machin as a workmate, he really was one of the loveliest. Simple as that.
Nick Machin, top guy, top journalist, a real people person, and that's the secret, I think, to Nick's success. He liked people, he cared about people, the people he worked with, the people he worked for, but also the people that he served as a news editor. He wanted to give them the stories that they deserved, or he felt they deserved, but also he wanted his staff that were under him to know they had a safe and supportive environment to flourish, one that would offer feedback as well as praise, and you know, and everyone who worked under him knew that he would have their back, and I think that was vitally important. He wasn't a shouter. You wouldn't see him screaming across the newsroom, throwing staplers. He wasn't that kind of guy, and people reacted to that in an environment which, you know, newsroom can be quite a stressful place. And I think it's no surprise that a lot of the people that Nick worked with or worked under Nick have gone on to senior roles in newsrooms and news organisations across the country, and that's his journalistic legacy. And I think you know, that's something that you know, should make him and his family enormously proud.
Delighted and honoured to be asked to say a few words about Nick. Tried drawing up a list of stories to share from the office, the City Arms, mighty Badger gigs, and travels to far-flung places, or even the badlands of Skegness. Had to cross most of them out, as best kept unsaid in public. It's 20 years since I first met Nick. He was one of the first people I met when I started at the South Wales Echo, one of the first new colleagues to take time out to get to know me, and almost certainly one of the first people I went for a pint with after work. He was certainly the first to offer me their spare room when I needed somewhere to live, and the first to suggest taking 6 weeks off work to drive around parts of the United States. And he was probably the only other person who thought it was a good idea to jack in our jobs and go travelling. Through all of those days in the newsroom, all those stories best told over a pint, wherever we were in the world, Nick was at the centre of whichever group we were in. He was not the loudest, unless he was playing drums. He was at the heart of whatever was going on, probably making friends. Many of the young journalists who benefited from his help and guidance became and remained his friends. It is fitting this award in his name honours his work helping aspiring journalists. Congratulations to the winners and those on the shortlist. Although still reckon judging should involve Nick's ultimate litmus test for a young journalist, the ability to make a good cup of tea, and plenty of them.
Nick had a huge influence on my life in Cardiff personally, for a couple of obvious reasons. Nick was one of the first people who desked my copy, and when I was on trial at Media Wales, he kind of really helped me along and made me realise, you know, what a reporter should be looking out for, the things that they should be doing. I went to Borders Bookshop that was shutting down at the end of 2009 to try and find out what was happening with it, and Nick really pushed me to get answers, and he just wanted to know what was happening, and that kind of really opened my eyes to what a journalist was really, and what I should try and aspire to be. You know, he's nurtured so many young journalists, and he's been such a welcoming face in the newsroom to dozens, scores of young journalists. To me, coming from Newcastle, not knowing a single person in Cardiff, he gave me a roof over my head. He literally took me in when he didn't have to do that, and it was probably inconvenient and for a lot longer than he ever wanted. But Nick, being Nick, was just so generous with his time, with the practicality of the situation. He gave me a favourable rate on rent. He was just an unbelievable bloke, and someone who introduced me to the social circle at work, someone who introduced me to how to act as a friend, as a human being, and just how to be really. He's so sorely missed, and it's a cliche to say that no one has a bad word to say about him, but it's true. I think the thing that stands out with Nick was he kept up with people. You know, he'd go on a round the world bus tour with people, and he kept in touch with them, and they wanted to keep in touch with him. You know, the people he worked with, the young journalists on the Celtic titles, they looked up to him, and they saw him as someone who they really wanted to do their very best for because of who Nick was. And he had such a sense of fun. He just wanted to have a laugh in the pub when we played golf, when watching the football. He just wanted a laugh, you know. I mean, I think the things that stand out are the kind of the Cockney rhyming slang, you know. It's not even Cockney rhyming slang, but Kenny Thomas for outstanding when anything was good, and his little phrases and things he said and did. And he was just a brilliant bloke, and it's very fitting that there's a lasting tribute in his name.
Some absolutely lovely memories of Nick there as a friend, a colleague, a boss and a husband. Thanks to everyone who took part in that video for sharing your thoughts about Nick with us. You probably noticed during that we've been using some of the comments that have been posted on the stream. You've obviously figured that out without me remembering to tell you to do that, but do keep your comments coming in. We can use them during the broadcast. Your tributes to Nick, your congratulations, or anything else you'd like to say. Keep it clean during the show. We'll endeavour to use them. One of the consistent themes that came through in that video was Nick's constant commitment to providing support, mentoring, advice and opportunities to those around him. To develop that theme, I'm delighted to introduce a short video by Emma Barnett, host of Woman's Hour on BBC Radio 4 and the BBC's Newsnight programme, and a former Cardiff journalism graduate, to talk about her experiences of starting out in the industry.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be talking to you today. I'm actually on my day off, and I was thinking about when I started out in journalism, and my advice would be get a specialism. I started by writing about media, then technology, and I remember being really worried that that wouldn't be the specialism that I would want to do forever, but actually it didn't matter because it taught me how to have a beat, and it taught me how to make contacts, and all of those things are really important. And on that sort of aspect of it, talking about mentors and how important they are and people who champion you, I do think if you can make connections with people by trying to think what you could do for them as well as what you're hoping they will do for you, that's a really good way to go about it. And I always say as well with our career and our profession, it's very entrepreneurial. You've got to kind of make your own connections, make your own luck. And one of the best connections I made was with a woman called Alice at the BBC when I was in my mid to late 20s while I was still at the Telegraph, and she took a real punt on me. She sent me off to do an interview for Woman's Hour, and it was with Yoko Ono, not the easiest interviewee, and somehow I managed to get some decent interview lines out of her, and that relationship grew and grew, and 10 years later I am where I am now, presenting Woman's Hour. But that all began with some mentoring and some championing. And I'm not saying everything leads to everything. There's lots of other people I've met along the way just help me with one thing, one bit of advice. But those relationships for your output, for what you actually create, but also for the job opportunities, it's all about what we are doing. It's all about journalism. It's all about telling stories, and it's all about the story of your career and how to progress. So I wish you the best of luck. I loved training at Cardiff University. I loved living in Cardiff for 9 months. And thank you very much for having me. It's a lovely thing to be asked to talk to you.
Thanks to Emma for making time. She's a very busy woman, Emma Barnett, so thanks very much to her for making time to talk to us this evening. Now it's time for our main award of the night, which is for Young Journalist of the Year. Let's have a look who made the shortlist.
Young Journalist of the Year. Fionn Lewis. Fionn earned herself a place on the shortlist with a portfolio that included a detailed study of the UK's spiralling COVID rates in the early days of the pandemic, and a moving interview with a nurse who woke from a COVID-induced coma to find his husband had died. Katie Bellis. Katie impressed the judges with a heartbreaking story of parents whose 10-month-old baby died tragically in her sleep, and also lifted the lid on allegations of harassment and bullying at a school where staff were threatening to strike. Lucy John. The work submitted by Lucy included the story of a mother who died in her husband's arms during the holiday of a lifetime, and an interview with a young woman who suffered appalling violence at the hands of her boyfriend during lockdown. Lydia Stevens. Lydia made the shortlist with a varied portfolio that included a well-compiled portrait of how the community and economy of Merthyr Tydfil were dealing with lockdown, and the miracle survival story of a premature baby born at the start of the pandemic, weighing just £1 6 ounces. Ryan O'Neill. Ryan completes our nominees thanks to a set of features that trace the efforts of a group of war veterans in Newport to rebuild their lives amid PTSD and chronic injuries, and revealed the troubled future for the city's flagship Friars Walk retail development.
To present this award, I am delighted to welcome the chair of our judging panel, Ian McGregor, Editor Emeritus of the Telegraph and the Chairman of the Society of Editors. Welcome, Ian, and over to you.
Thanks, Paul. I'd just like to say, first of all, what an honour it is to be invited to be helping with the judging again this year. This is such a special prize, and it was lovely to see last year's winners, Marcus and Anna, doing their videos. And before I go on to the really important bit, can I just say hello to Sophia? It was lovely to see you, Sophia, on the video, and it'd be nice to catch up, hopefully, again next year. It really is fantastic that this prize is in Nick's memory, and that it should be for young journalists from Wales. And I know myself and all the other judges felt very passionately that it's clear from all the entries that there is such a huge amount of talent coming through. The judges were very, very impressed by all the entries, the quality of the writing, the obvious interviewing skills, the use of video and graphics to accompany many of the articles. But we obviously had to make some hard decisions. So some people are going to lose out. I apologize. So the results, first of all, hold on to your seats if you're sitting down. The results for the journalist who was highly commended for their work was Lydia Stevens. Congratulations, Lydia. The judges said of your work, Lydia is a very talented young journalist who demonstrates a great connection with her patches and has really good contacts. Her work shows both great consistency and variety, and she does brilliantly to get the stories behind the stories. Really, really well done. And if I just may recap on something Emma Barnett said, who I used to work with some years ago at the Telegraph, that her points about contacts and having a beat are absolutely bang on. And clearly, Lydia, you've done that. So well done. It really is fantastic. This is the moment of truth. The winner of this year's Young Journalist of the Year award. Is there a drum roll, Paul? I can't remember.
I haven't got a drum sound effect.
No drum roll. The winner of this year's Young Journalist of the Year award is Ryan O'Neill. The judges said of Ryan, I can see you there, Ryan. I can see you all, and Ryan, you're not wiping your tears with joy yet, but Ryan was the most outstanding storyteller. And these are the quotes from the judges. His writing is so good. You really feel like he cares about the people he is interviewing, and each feature was compelling. Ryan, well done. I believe Paul is providing a check and a trophy, and they're going to be sent to you in the post, as well as me congratulating you now. But unless it embarrasses you, I'd just like to say well done. How does it feel to be the winner?
I'm not really quite sure, to be honest. I'm a bit shocked. But obviously it feels really, really great to get that. So thank you so much. Obviously it's been a strange year, my first year at Wales Online. Been working from home for most of it. But I've definitely learned so much from all the people that I've worked with so far, and listening to all the things that people were saying about Nick. I know I definitely wouldn't have had a clue what I was doing for the past 12 months if it wasn't for the news editors at Wales Online. So yeah, they've definitely steered me in the right direction for sure.
This is your chance to name a couple of them and say thank you to your mentors if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Josh Natman, who leads the way in the new Newport Online team. He's been doing a fantastic job and helping myself and everyone else on the Newport team every day. As well as that, Dave James, Alison Perlman, Ben Wright, and Kieran Jones as well, in particular, who've all been kind of overseeing my stuff at different times. And
I think you've just secured a pay rise unofficially, he says. But I think, as you alluded to, Ryan, you only came back. You only came over to Newport just over a year ago, wasn't it? And then you had a month, literally, I think, in the office before you had to work from home. So that must have been quite difficult, developing the contacts.
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, it was difficult. It was, I had a bit of time to get down the patch and sort of get to know people a bit better. But even during the pandemic, as and when I can, I've been able to get to know people and sort of build up that contacts book. Even working from home, everyone's still only a phone call away, and it's been a bit different. But it's definitely it's been something I've somehow managed to. I hope been able to do. And
when I was reading sorry, Ryan.
Yeah.
When I was reading your material, it was so obvious that what was important to you was telling the human stories behind all your journalism.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of the war veterans, I did feel speaking to them and hearing kind of the things that they'd been through and how they'd been felt forgotten about. I thought that was really important to shed a light on. I think and in the case of Friars Walk, big developments, you often don't get the it can be often, I suppose, difficult to put that in context for the people who actually live there, and I felt that was really important to tell it in a way that reflected in an honest way for people who actually live there, so that because so much of this stuff goes on in a way that people aren't aware of, and I thought it was important to make people who mightn't otherwise engage with it every day aware of it. So.
That's fantastic. You probably, I don't know if you're aware of this, you're getting lots of herograms on screen, messages of congratulations and how well deserved this award is. My last point was, I think you got quite a lot of feedback, talking about responses, you got a lot of feedback from some people who appeared in the articles and maybe people who knew them. Is that right? After they were published?
Yeah, I did. I mean, the people, the war veterans in particular, they were very much appreciative of the article. And I spoke to people involved in the different organizations who said that they'd managed to get sort of a lot more attention and a lot more traction, and they felt that it was maybe that they hadn't been listened to so much before, and that it was really, they seemed really, really appreciative of someone doing that. So yeah, and it's happened quite a few cases, and it is quite kind of the nice part of journalism as well when you because people talk about the negative comments and stuff, but it is really nice when people give you positive feedback and say, I've really, that made a difference to me, and that's I suppose why we do this, and yeah, so that's really nice.
Well, I think that's a lovely way to round off and very uplifting. So many congratulations again, Ryan, and to everyone else, because even those people who didn't win, I promise you the entries were fantastic. Well done. Over to Paul.
Yeah, congratulations as well from me, Ryan, and to all the shortlisted nominees in a fantastic category. Some outstanding work there. Thanks for all the comments that have been coming in. Some brilliant comments that we've had there on screen tonight. So thank you for sending all those in. That is about all we've got time for tonight. He says, as if we're going to get, there's someone jangling the keys outside the door. That's just my cat, unfortunately, if you can hear that. Before we go, there are a lot of people to thank, without whom tonight just wouldn't have been possible. Firstly, thanks again to our sponsors, Cardiff Council, Effective Communication, Western Power Distribution. Their generous support has meant this event is already secure for several years to come, and we can keep building from here. Thanks to all the people who appeared in our videos. Sophia Machin, Laura Kemp, Sandra Loy, Pete Shuttleworth, Rob Freeman, Simon Gaskell, Anna Lewis, Marcus Hughes, and Emma Barnett. And a huge thank you to everyone who gave up their time to put those videos together. Tyler Mears, who edited them, Rob Brown, who shot them, and Rob Norman, who coordinated getting everything together. A massive thank you, I can't say a big enough thank you to Daryl Corner, who's been pressing all the buttons tonight and making this all go together. Without whom this would be pretty much just a Zoom call. So thank you hugely to Daryl, and thanks also to our glamorous voiceover artist, Hannah Jones. Thanks once again to all our judges and to everyone who entered. This event wouldn't exist without the young journalists who take the time to submit their applications. So thanks and congratulations to all of you. And lastly, thanks to everyone who's tuned in and supported tonight's event. I hope you've enjoyed it. I can't wait until we can meet up again to do this in person next year. Good night.